Hi, reading group. Hope you're doing well and staying safe as always. For this week in the reading class, we are going to be shifting our attention to the topic of motivation. Now, this is a topic that we have explored some, even when it came to comprehension and also when it came to differentiation, right? One of the questions we asked ourselves is if the students would be interested in the content. And this week we are going to focus specifically on students who may not be interested in the content. So one of the questions that you were asked in the Hinchman text, or the way that they approached motivation, was students asking themselves questions like, can I do this activity? Which we worked on a little bit more last week with struggling readers and what that means. But then another question students will ask themselves is, do I want to do this activity? And this is something that I found even in my own high school teaching experience, which was over 10 years ago now, but that quite a few students simply did not want to do the reading that was assigned to them. Students who were capable of doing the reading, but students who just weren't interested in doing the reading that was assigned to them. So they gave some excellent strategies for how you can engage those students and encourage them to read. And one of those ideas specifically has to do with inquiry and inquiry-based learning. And so that's something that we're going to be exploring more in the discussion in class. You guys will be exploring in the discussion online. And then you guys will be doing some practice with inquiry-based learning, because inquiry-based learning is one of these strategies that sounds really promising, and it is really promising, but it can be really difficult to implement well. And so you're going to be doing some practicing with, what does that look like? How do I get started? And some ideas for doing so. So first, I mentioned the reading a little bit already. Both of these chapters do a really nice job of making the reading authentic for the students, and additional strategies for what we do to best motivate the students. In addition, in each of these videos, they are pretty short. They're from Edutopia, which is a really good education resource. If you're not familiar with Edutopia, it's another one that is great to become familiar with, because the videos and the samples that they show you are ones that come from actual classrooms. So you can see an idea of what real teachers are doing with inquiry in their classroom and how that is working. So make sure you watch these short clips if you haven't already, but they give you an example of what this actually looks like in the classroom. The thing with inquiry, as I mentioned a little bit, is that it's really promising. It can be, really wonderful when implemented well. It provides a lot of opportunity for learning, but it can also be really tricky, especially for beginner teachers, because it can be really frightening, right? In the most ambitious form of inquiry, the students have an incredible amount of say over what they're learning, how they're learning, basically every aspect of the text that they're reading, which can be difficult, right? Because you're providing a lot of faith and trust in the students. And so you are going to be practicing with that a little bit, but we are going to be starting more on the guided inquiry end of the inquiry spectrum, where you are going to be providing and scaffolding a lot of the resources and the materials for the students. So that's kind of like the easiest and the simplest way to get started with inquiry. As you will eventually be in your own classroom, this is where I would recommend that you start with inquiry. And then, even with each new group of students, you're probably going to want to start with guided inquiry, and then you may work your class towards more independent-based inquiry, where you give the students more freedom and even the text that they read. So for the assignment for this week, as you guys know, the last couple of weeks, I've been giving you guys the text and saying, okay, kind of here's your textbook, as if you're in the classroom. Here's your chapter that the students are going to be reading. And so what can we do with that, like very traditional textbooky kind of lesson, where you have the text and you have to determine what might make it complex or what might be some barriers for students being interested or able to read. And then you guys came up with strategies for that. This week now, we are going to be starting with a set of standards, which is a characteristic of inquiry-based learning, where you start with a specific standard, and you may or may not bring in like a specific assigned text, but you are also going to be doing a lot of selecting of text on your own. So you're going to be thinking about, if students are meeting the standard, what text might I choose? Or you're going to be choosing texts that would be interesting to students to answer a specific essential question. And so I just clicked into the discussion instead of the assignment. Sorry about that. Okay, back on track. So for the assignment that you guys are going to be doing this week, there we go, that's what I was looking for. What you're going to be doing is you are going to be using this assigned standard that I found in your content area, or if you want to go and find your own standard, that's okay with me too. If you'd rather, try your hand at choosing a standard that would work well for inquiry. And you are going to be using the standard initially to come up with an essential question or a set of essential questions. And so what we're doing with the essential questions is we are coming up with questions that align with the standards, but that also are questions that the students would be interested in. So for example, for the music standard where it says identifying and describing changes in elements and expressive qualities. If I were just to say to general music students, hey, we're going to be identifying and describing changes in elements and expressive qualities. Students may not have any interest in that as well. And especially if you just start with like a classical piece of music, students may be even less interested if they are especially like general music students and may say, why do I care about this at all? Now, on the other hand, if you were to ask a question like, why are Taylor Swift songs so popular? Or who are they popular for? Why is someone like Taylor Swift or another musician who's popular, why is that person's music so compelling, so interesting? Why does it make them such a popular artist? A question like that, if you ask a question like that of middle school students, they're going to have a lot of ideas about that. Now, they'll have all kinds of ideas outside of what her music looks like, but you could choose someone like that who is, currently a popular artist and ask students questions about the music that they're singing and why it's so popular, why it's so catchy. And then you could get them into some of these different elements of, crescendo, ritardando. How do they use these? How do artists use these expressions to make their music so appealing to young people? Then, of course, you can get into more classical music. You can get into more traditional text. You can get into text that would explain why these kinds of things are happening, or you may give students an opportunity to do some searching to figure out, well, why is this happening? What's happening? Actually print out a piece of music and have students do some exploring and go from there. But you start with this question that may be interesting to them. Another example here, let's take a look at the PE example, for example. So discuss and understand the importance of fitness as it relates to academic performance. This too is something that students may or may not, middle school students, high school students may or may not be interested in. They may, why does it matter about my fitness and my academic performance? But if you were to ask something like, are the smarter students in the school healthier or less healthier than students who have lower GPAs? That may be something where students may have ideas or opinions, or maybe you ask them something like, if I go the entire week and I eat McDonald's sandwiches and I don't exercise at all, is that going to affect how I score on a test the next week? And students will probably have all kinds of opinions about that. But if you ask them a question like that, then whether they're finding the text or what you guys are going to be doing for this, starting to find the text, that students will need to dig and build their case because they're going to be interested in what the answer is. So then regardless of kind of what your standard is, which one is your content area, you are going to go through, you're going to come up with a couple of different questions like the ones I just gave that is going to make them interested and going to make them want to look into the topic further, look into the question further. Beyond that, because we're kind of started with guiding inquiry, you guys are going to, for this assignment, be providing them with the text. And when it says text, that doesn't have to just be text. I mean, it may be, right? So you may, for the PE one, be bringing in a couple of academic articles and having students read them and then share what they read with their classmates about the relationship between academic fitness and, between fitness and academic performance. You may have a video with an athlete talking about this. Maybe it's like a college athlete that the students are a professional athlete, or, an Olympian or something like that, who's going to, talk about this relationship when they were in college and, how fitness maybe played a role in their academic performance. So you might bring in videos You want to make sure to bring in some kind of traditional text, so maybe you're bringing in some articles, but you're going to provide a list of texts that you're going to have students engage with throughout your inquiry learning segment. So I would say probably think about this spanning over 3 to 5 days. And then you're going to provide a list of activities. So what are they going to be doing? Maybe one day they're going to be doing, maybe the first day they're going to be doing something like a Four Corners activity, where you're going to say it and something like, to what extent does an artist's use of crescendo affect their popularity? I agree, disagree, go to each corner and justify your answer. So you may do something like a Four Corners activity or an anticipation guide to get them thinking. Next, you may be bringing in some academic articles and assigning students, do like a jigsaw activity where you have 4 different articles that talk about the relationship between academic performance and fitness. And so they're each going to read one article, and then you're going to have them group and share what they read. So they're going to read it, they're going to summarize it, then they're going to share it with their classmates. Then maybe one of the last days you're going to have students somehow present what they found. Maybe this is a traditional presentation, or maybe this is a public service announcement. Maybe the students realize, the importance of fitness, and so you're going to have them create little public service announcements that they can share with other classmates, or they could share with maybe the elementary students. They're going to create something that talks about the importance of fitness and, do something kind of fun that then can be shared with the elementary students. So all different kinds of ideas. These are just a couple of examples, but you're going to be using this standard or another standard. You are going to be finding some specific text that you're going to have students read, view, etc. throughout the week. And then you're going to be providing a list of activity, brainstorm a list of activities that you may have students complete as a part of your learning segment. So 3 to 5 lessons. So you're not actually fully fleshing out these lessons, but you're just providing a list of potential essential questions, potential texts that you may use, maybe like 8 to 10 texts, which can include, like I said, like videos and TED Talks and things like that. And then a list of activities that you may have students engage with throughout the week. How are they going to be engaging with the topic, and then how are they going to be engaging with these different texts that you're using?